Aloha, everybody. My name is Rob Hack. I'm on the board of directors of the Hawaii Pacific Export Council in Honolulu. The Hawaii Pacific Export Council is a nonprofit, quasi-related to the U.S. Department of Commerce, and all of our board members are cleared or certified and recommended to be on our board by the U.S. Department of Commerce Secretary. And our board members have to have a great deal of experience in their exporting careers in order to be considered to be on the board. These are voluntary positions, and we're very happy to be on the board and help Hawaii and Pacific Island companies export to foreign markets. And to be clear, an export is not from one island to another island or even to the mainland or to Guam or Saipan, but an export is to a foreign country such as Germany, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, and today's focus, of course, is on Japan. And our webinar today, the title is Exporting to Japan for Hawaii Companies. We are able to put on this series of webinars. I say webinars because in the past these were all seminars, and hopefully next year we can get back to a seminar format. But the past 2 years these have been webinars, and it's completely online, and we're teaching our Hawaii companies specific topics related to exporting. That could be logistics, it could be finance, or it could be a geography such as Japan, like today's meeting. We're very fortunate to be able to put on this series of seminars and perform our one-on-one company mentoring sessions because of a generous grant we received from DBET, who in turn receives a grant from SBA. So we'd like to thank very much DBET and SBA for allowing us to put on these webinars. With that, I'd like to introduce Jamie Lum from DBET because she'll explain a little bit about the High Step program, which is a program run by SBA in Washington, D.C., the Small Business Administration. It's called a STEP program, which is the State Trade Expansion Program for many U.S. states who apply for the funding. And in Hawaii, that's rebranded to High Step for the Hawaii State Trade Expansion Program. And Jamie Lum is one of the key people at DBET who administers that program. So Jamie, could you please explain a little bit about High Step before we jump into the Japan-specific seminar?
Thank you, Rob. Mahalo, everyone, for joining us this afternoon, and aloha. I am Jamie Lum with the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism with the state of Hawaii. Rob has already covered a lot about this High Step program. As he mentioned, it is primarily funded through a grant that we received from the Small Business Administration. It is on a competitive basis, so states have to, and territories can apply for it annually, and we actually just submitted our grant application last week for the 2023. It's actually for a 2-year, 2023 and 2024. So we hope to get good news. Probably we'll hear earliest maybe end of August, but in September that we've received another grant. This session is part of the High Step, and as Rob mentioned, we do work with HPEC to put on these webinars. We have 3 components of High Step. So, and thank you, Rob, for putting up our website here, which is invest.hawaii.gov. And you go under the exporting tab for information on High Step. So we have 3 components. We have our export readiness, of which this webinar is part of that. We have our Hawaii Pavilions, and we have our company assistance. So export readiness, as Rob mentioned, we have, Rob helps us, and HPEC helps us to put on specific export related topics or market related topics, of which today we're going to be covering Japan. So companies can sign up for these webinars. We do also have recordings of past seminars on our website, and I know that HPEC also has it on their website as well. So you can review really several years of recordings of these sessions that we've had, I think since about 2017 or maybe even back to 2016. So you can be on the lookout for that. Part of our export readiness is also involves, as Rob mentioned, one-on-one business advising. So we work with organizations like HPEC, like the Small Business Development Centers, the Women's Business Center, which in Hawaii is run by the Mink, Patsy Mink Center, and the Veteran Center. So we do work with partners to help companies that are interested in exporting. High Step is open to companies that are either just thinking about exporting or already exporting and maybe looking to expand. So it really covers a broad range of companies that are just looking to be able to sell their products outside of the US. So to start, you'll see on the right-hand side under, there's a registration. Companies can submit a registration form. It does not obligate you at all to participate in High Step, but really what we're looking for is just some information about your company, what your export experience is. And from that, then we would put you in touch with one of our partner organizations for a consultation session. So that's all part of the export readiness. The second component is our Hawaii Pavilions. We do select several different shows. We work with the Department of Agriculture to put on a number of these shows. And what we do is we use High Step funds to subsidize the majority of the cost to be at the trade show. We want to make it affordable for companies to participate. And we also feel that it's valuable to, as a group, go in under the Hawaii banner. We find that that's very powerful way for companies to also be able to promote themselves and their product or their service. The next show that we are actually actively recruiting for right now is the Tokyo International Gift Show. So if you are interested, you can contact me. I know that that's in early September. And like I said, we are still recruiting for that show at this time. The final component is our company assistance. Right now, we've actually already awarded the funds earlier in this calendar year, but this is where companies can submit their export plan and be able to request some funding to help support some of their export activities over and above any other activities that they might already be participating in. Say if they're in a Hawaii Pavilion, they may want to go to another trade show. They may want to travel to meet with potential buyers, distributor. They may want to take advantage of the Gold Key service through the US commercial service, and funds can be used to pay for that. There are a number of things, e-commerce, many, especially during the pandemic, many companies were turning to e-commerce. And so if you're interested in a particular market, you can use funds to translate your website, to set up an e-commerce site targeted to a particular market that you want to sell to. It can be used for digital marketing. So really a number of things. So that's the company assistance portion of the program. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I know I rushed through it, but you can find all the information on our website. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you very much, Rob.
Thank you, Jamie. That was great. And I'd just like to point out this webinar we're on today is specifically about Japan. And if you look at the Hawaii pavilions that DBET is purchasing space at, and the Department of Agriculture is purchasing space at. It's very Japan heavy, and the state has a lot of resources available to help our companies export to Japan. So getting into one of these pavilions is a fantastic opportunity, and the cost is greatly subsidized. And I strongly recommend our local companies to get involved as much as possible. Jamie alluded to an archive of videos. The Hawaii Pacific Export Council archive is here. If you just go to YouTube and search for Hawaii Pacific Export Council, you can easily find our channel. List of videos goes back many years, as Jamie said, back to 2016 at this point, and we're quickly approaching 100 videos, which is several hundred hours of content here with very specific topics such as e-commerce for exporting, finance, logistics, different countries we've covered, Taiwan, Korea, Canada, etc. So please have a look at that. Now, I'd like to jump into our first speaker, and I'll just quickly put up the website of trade.gov, which I go to often during a week to look up certain things for different markets that my customers are working in, and looking for country-specific things or even market or industry-specific topics that the U.S. Department of Commerce has put together. This is a fantastic website. With that, I'd like to introduce Stephen Anderson. He's a U.S. Commercial Service Officer based in Tokyo. We thank him for joining us. It's his morning, just after 10 a.m. on Friday. So Stephen, please tell us about what's going on in Japan.
Be a pleasure. Thank you, Rob and Jamie, for introducing so many great resources. I'm going to try to just talk with you for a few minutes and really set the landscape. We are very pleased here at the embassy to have been able to welcome your Governor Ige and his group coming into Japan. So I think more than a lot of people, all of you are up to date with the resources you just saw to make plans to come back to Japan. And we do welcome people coming in, particularly in the commercial service. As mentioned, we are the individual company support location. And I see among our participants, I have Miho Hoshino, our office's key assistant for all of you, and I'll introduce her again at the end. What I'd like to do today, talking to you and mentioning that the governor coming, he's the first one to have met our new ambassador, Rahm Emanuel. We are really pleased now to have that type of representation here in Japan. As you've probably all watched the news, things have they're probably as good as it gets in the terms of U.S.-Japan relations. The relationship is revived, active, and if you watch the news, the president's visit, we also were able to welcome the Secretary of Commerce at the same time. So we have now reset the relationship. I'd say we're ready to roll with a lot of top-level activities, but we're eager to welcome individual companies and individuals back into the market to revive a lot of things that have been trying to move forward throughout the period of the last 2 years of COVID. Let me just tell you a bit about myself. I'm returning to Japan. I tell people I'm in and out a lot. This is my third foreign service tour. I was an academic here before. You all know, though, this is an experienced group. You've been back and forth a lot. You are sitting in a wonderful place between Japan and Hawaii. I really miss going through and staying in Kahala and going to Hanauma Bay. I've been in and out in my career a lot. You're all, I'm very envious of where you are now. And I'm sure you're all eager to get your businesses up and running and get the exports back to this market. So it's a pleasure, it's a privilege to talk to all of you today. To set the context, I think the first thing to say is to talk about the yen rate. It's for people being here, so cost of doing business when you come in, if you're coming from dollars, Maybe it's not at the 360 level way back when as it was under Bretton Woods, but 134 to the dollar, it's a big change. And I'm sure that's going to make all of you have to recalculate your plans for what you'd like to do here, but keep that big change in mind. And I think the other big change, and you can see from my outfit in blue and yellow today, my spouse said it was spring-like, but it's really about the colors from Ukraine. And the ambassador has made very clear about how we needed to reset the relationship with Japan. We share the common values. And I think also for those people that, if you were here in Japan now, just the individual suffering that's occurring and the reaction of Japanese people to what's occurred, that really has also reset the relationship. We are two countries with common values. And perhaps the president's visit, the biggest part of that was also holding a meeting of the Quad, where the Indian Prime Minister and the new Prime Minister of Australia also attended in that period of time. So the general context, I think, of the US-Japan relationship and countries of common values, it's really reset the context and environment that you'll all deal with. Now, as far as business goes, and I know it's not this group necessarily, but things like defense, energy, and then the health field more broadly, I think those sectors all have done a lot of new business as a result of this environment. And I suppose the health vaccines, that's the most likely to be a context for you in cosmetics and other consumer goods that you're doing. I think you're looking at a very friendly environment for new business from America. This is a very positive time. And at the same time, I recognize all of you. You have the competition you face from Korea or Singapore or France, those types of products. It's the same market. I think there's been some continuity there that we've watched for a long period of time. If you come to the gift show, if you come to the shows that Jamie described, there's still some continuities. I suppose also there's still some challenges. So let me talk a bit about those challenges, and as I did at the beginning of the call, for all of you that like to begin to travel, like to begin to get back into the market, getting in still is going to cause you some challenges, because you'll have a lot of paperwork to do. First of all, getting the visa, it's still necessary, although we hope that'll change at some point. But it's about COVID, and it's about the wearing of the masks. I see Jimmy Chan is still there, masked up at the beginning of the call. That's Japan still at this moment. And I suppose the beginning of June, I've seen people outside. They're saying when you're outside, you may not need a mask. I've seen more people, more women without their masks, and they may need new cosmetics. But just be aware, Japan is still very much facing the challenge and being concerned about the challenge of how COVID could come back. And so we're still dealing with that challenge in the post-period endemic concerns about health and restrictions on travelers. The initial travel groups have been here, but they're all following itineraries, dealing with a list of guidelines, educating the tourists that are coming in about restrictions about COVID. So please be aware of that. But I'll go back to my earlier point that I suppose the biggest concern I think I'd have for small business coming in is watching your pricing. Inflation is likely to be with us for a while, and now it's impacting Japanese prices that have been pretty stable since the 1990s. And so I think that when it hit 134 to the dollar this week, it really made me think that this is not going back to earlier levels. It was around 110 or so for most of the COVID period. So that may be the biggest message to get across to you from on the ground today, that's a concern. I think, though, at the same time, the other issue I would raise about the near-term stability of this location, Japan, in the past year or so, we've been concerned about how the political situation will develop. But it looks very, very strong for stability in this market. The Forecasts for the July 10th upper house election are favorable to the LDP. It appears that they'll maintain a majority, and that, in terms of the situation for overall market context, means for the next 3 years, there might be a lot of stability in the policymaking realm. So that type of kind of midterm forecast is to kind of overcome any of the political challenges that might have occurred. But I suppose that the very last thing that we want to get into in our discussion is think about the traveling party, the arrangements that you had. If you have a trade show, typically the trade show organizers will give you good direction for entry. But up till this point, every company that's come in has had to have some type of Japanese counterpart to help them with the paperwork to enter. And those restrictions, although we hope that they'll change soon, I don't think we have any forecast that they'll immediately change in any radical way. So we're monitoring the situation. And when you do travel, typically an embassy website with the State Department on the American Citizens page, Citizen Services page, that will have the latest word. And that's the place to look if you want to get any readout from the US government side. But of course, all of the restrictions with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and then other agencies that would be supportive to you as you come, those things are also posted on the websites, but we typically don't have jurisdiction over those things. All we can do is say, give you the support. If we do offer a service, I highly recommend my colleagues here and in Osaka with the commercial service. And we're really pleased. Thank you for the invite today, Rob. It's great to see your activity. I know some of the people on your board. It's really good that we can work with you, and we look forward to taking your questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Stephen. That was a wonderful overview. Just to be clear for our audience, that we have a U.S. Commercial Service Officer in Hawaii. His name is John Holman. And by statute, he is the executive secretary of the Hawaii Pacific Export Council. And if anybody has any questions or needs access to a U.S. commercial service officer abroad, such as Stephen or some other market that you're interested in, then John Holman is your window to that person. And I will make sure to get the contact information for John Holman out to everyone. Okay, great. Thanks very much. Stephen, did you want to take questions now, or are you able to stay, hang out for a little while?
I will. No, I'm happy to stay with you and allow the other speakers to contribute to the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to introduce Jimmy Chan. I think a lot of our attendees probably know Jim. He's the president of the Hawaiian Chip Company in Honolulu, and he makes fantastic chips and sauces and other products. And I asked him to say a few words at this event because he's had some success in the Japanese market, both with tourists who are visiting Hawaii from Japan, but also exporting his products to the Japanese market. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jim. And if you just say a few words, I know his factory, and I know he's just a couple of feet away from where they're making chips. So it makes me jealous that he's there because those chips are really fantastic. Anyway, thanks for joining us, Jim. Please share your expertise with the audience.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Rob. And yeah, like Stephen mentioned, we're still masked up here. They lifted restrictions and I showed up without a mask and I realized, hey, I'm the only one walking around this factory without one. So, when in Rome or in Japan or Hawaiian Chip Company, do as they do. So, so I'm just trying to be respectful of everyone here. And, and that's one of my concerns. And as we open up and get back to Japan, like, how are we going to be viewed as outsiders coming into that country, and how are those interactions going to be? Am I going to have to mask up for every business meeting, or, those are questions I think we'll all find out, as we get back over there. But just to kind of give everybody a little history who doesn't know. You know, I started my journey on export to Japan about 12 years ago. It was visiting the FoodX show, as mentioned in that on that list there, and we presented through the through a booth with the Hawaii Food Manufacturers Association, and I think that got funding from the Department of Agriculture, and we set up, and you know, I was told that it's going to be a long road to setting up successful export. And lo and behold, it took almost 2 years of going back and forth between here and Japan, and you know, doing various trade shows, including the Tokyo Gift Show, and then a few other opportunities before we landed our first key account, which actually ended up being Kuaina Burger. Kuaina Burger they had 2 locations in Hawaii. I'm not sure if either is still going, but they've got almost 30 in Japan. And you know, every summer they feature our sauce and order a few hundred gallons of barbecue sauce, of our spicy barbecue sauce, and feature it on their burger. And that has actually been the most success we've had, because it's food service. We've tried with prepackaged products, and that's a tough sell, because one of the things that I learned up there by going and seeing is that our packaging is not oftentimes not up to Japanese standards and specifications. So it was very challenging for my products to find success on the retail store shelves. But the sauces are selling well through restaurants, because it's also part of a menu item. So we're not trying to sell the whole product. We're just part of a menu item. So we're maybe 5 to 10% of the cost. And at that point, it became a lot easier for the Japanese restaurant to pass on our higher priced product onto the consumer. So you're not looking at, you know, a consumer balking at, how come I'm paying 30 to 40% more than I pay for this product in Hawaii? They're getting an authentic Hawaiian product as part of their menu, but not getting the sticker shock. So that's kind of the path that we followed. And in the pandemic, you know, I think the allure of that market is we have a very, you know, it appears to be a very loyal market for Hawaii, products of Hawaii. In the pandemic, our sales actually grew by almost 40%, because our export sales, our overall sales grew too, but our export sales had kind of, you know, it's been going up maybe 10% every year, 10%, and then it jumped up by 40% during the pandemic, because you got a consumer base there that genuinely loves Hawaii. But again, we're not doing as well as some of these other companies have been doing, you know, shipping container loads to Japan, but it's definitely a boost, especially when you see our economy shut down like it was in 2020. So with that, I mean, you know, my company is continuing its focus on trying to grow sales in Japan, food service, and that includes with the chips. So it's not selling our chips pre-packaged and or the store shelves. It's selling it in bulk packaging for restaurants. We do plan to display product at the upcoming Tokyo Gift Show, and we're planning to participate in the FoodX next year. And again, you know, without the subsidies from the state of Hawaii, I mean, that would be a really tough thing for a company my size, you know, to take on, because otherwise booth costs, you're looking at, almost $6,000 plus. So you get to, it's a really, really great advantage that we have here, a great resource that we have here.
Jim, I'll ask a quick question. Do you have any advice for companies going to TIGS or FoodX or one of these for the first time? Like what should they do or not do? As you're one of the companies who went there, you were young, the company was young, and you probably had big wide eyes looking around. And are there things that you've learned that you could pass on to some of our first time attendees?
So the one thing I'd say is take some time and explore the country, explore Tokyo, if anything. I went up there, hoping I'd hit the home run and be filling up container loads of chips and sending them over. That has not happened. But in studying, using these opportunities to be there, to get feedback on your product from buyers, listen to what they're telling you, and pay attention to what they're not saying either. If they're not placing orders, then it probably means there's something with your product that needs changing, or pricing or something, and use that as a learning opportunity. And for me, what I've done is, just by walking around Tokyo, every time I come back, I've got a new idea or a new version of something I'd like to apply to my business in Hawaii. And that has only made my business in Hawaii stronger and better. And now I'm better able to communicate what I'm trying to sell with visitors from that market, because I also understand what they're doing to sell products to me in their marketplace. People want to communicate. People are comfortable with communication and communicate the way they want to be communicated to. So by mimicking their sales presentations, their greetings, and all this stuff, and not without speaking Japanese, we can create a friendly environment for them to feel comfortable and hopefully spend. So that's my advice. Just study the market, have some fun, and enjoy, see, and take notes about what it is that you enjoy and appreciate up there. It's the amount of care that they put into what they're crafting. It's the amount of gratitude they show when you're making a purchase. There's so many details that are part of that experience, that I've applied to my business here and have had success, not just with visitors from that market, but with visitors in general. So yeah.
Great. Jimmy, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I know you're very busy making chips and sauces and trying to keep Costco stocked up, and we greatly appreciate your expertise. So thank you. Okay, our next speaker, we're going to jump into bilingual websites and social media and that kind of activity. We have a great resource here in Hawaii, Kanzo Nara. He's the owner of the I Do Web School, among other activities, but he's really a fantastic resource for our small companies here who need to develop Japanese language materials, particularly when it comes to e-commerce and social media. So with that, I'd like to introduce Kanzo, and here's a quick view of his website here. Kanzo-san, are you on?
Yes, I'm on. It seems my camera has frozen, so give me 1 second, please.
That's fine. How about if I jump ahead to Big Picture International? We'll come back to Konzo right after that.
That's fine. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. So let's jump ahead in the agenda to the Japan side of the e-commerce equation. We have a fantastic resource based in Tokyo is Big Picture International. And we have Mark Fuodi with us. He's spoken at several of our events in the past, and I think is just a tremendous resource for our Hawaii companies who are interested in getting involved in Rakuten or Amazon Japan. And I bring up here, let me show you, Mark, I'm going to hijack the screen back again for just a second.
Okay, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Show your website, and then show a little bit about what is Rakuten, and what, if there may be people on the webinar who are not familiar with Rakuten. I'm sure everybody's heard of Amazon, but there's Amazon.co.jp. And as you can tell, this is quite a bit busier and a lot of things going on here compared to, say, Amazon.com in the US market. And there's different rules for putting your products on here. There's different commissions that are charged in Japan, as well as different fulfillment requirements and what have you. And Mark and his team, Daniel included, who's here, are experts in this. And I highly recommend getting involved with them if you're interested in pursuing either Rakuten or Amazon. So with that, Mark, I'm going to stop sharing and you can reshare your screen. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. With that, let me actually just continue the theme. I was going to show this a little bit later, but I might as well show it now that you've introduced Rakuten. And thank you, Rob. And it's great to be back with you and working with you and all the support services and support agencies that are here for Hawaiian companies. Hello, everybody. Mark Fuodi. I'm an American living in Tokyo now, I think going on my 34th year. I've been here for a long time and I love life here. Of course, I'm envious of your lives in Hawaii. Would love nothing more than to establish very solid business relations with Hawaiian companies, so I can enjoy that lifestyle and that access. But what I'm showing you now is the marketplace that we've created on Rakuten. We have a similar brand on Amazon, but because Amazon is more product centric, we can't really build a marketplace within a marketplace. But I'll just go through this very quickly. We support a number of different product categories. We're actually expanding further into apparel, but we've been specializing more or less on food related and beverage related products. But we also have home electronics and related products like kitchenware, for example, novelty goods. And I just want to touch on this one thing. So we actually have been working with the South Australian government to put together a import and market entry plan for 7 new to market merchants. So we've been able to, instead of doing it one at a time like we normally do, we work with the government to create an easy and inexpensive path to a market entry for multiple merchants. And then, of course, all the ability to and the power of marketing can be applied to all of these new to market companies rather than one at a time. So this has been a very interesting and very productive experience. And I think I raise it because there are really 2 ways to do it. If you're a larger company, you can typically afford the expenses and the resources required to enter a new market. Whereas if you're more of an SME, there may be an opportunity to combine forces with non-competitive. In some cases, we do have 2 honey companies, for example, that are both participating in this Tasting South Australia promotion, but it is a good program, and I suspect it's going to be a model going forward for a lot of government and private sector partnerships. Okay, now on to the formal presentation. So basically, successful market entry into Japan via e-commerce. This could easily read market entry via the major marketplaces. Those of you that are familiar with e-commerce will know there's several ways to do it. You can be active on a marketplace like Amazon. You could set up your own online shop. You can use Shopify or Magento or any of the major platforms. We've tended to focus on the marketplaces because it really is cheaper, faster, easier. Instead of the expenses of setting up a website, which can be, sometimes $10,000 or more, for example, we can set up we could set up a brand shop on Rakuten and product listings on Amazon for half that price or less, for example. In addition, instead of having to start with scratch in terms of traffic traveling to your website, your standalone .co.jp website, there's traffic, there's organic traffic and search that goes on within these marketplaces. And in the case of Rakuten, 40 million active users and 110,000 registered users, 40 million active monthly users, 110 registered users. Amazon is some number that's smaller than that. I've never seen the figures, but I suspect it's somewhere around 2/3 or 3/4 of those numbers. So that's really where we focus. That's not to say that we don't do website. We do. We work on Shopify. We work on with individual standalone websites for our clients. We also do social media, and we also work offline. And this tends to be quite an appeal to our clients, especially those that traditionally have an offline business. And as a result, we basically consider ourselves omni-channel commerce supporters, although the majority of our business is focused on the marketplaces. So hopefully I didn't throw too much at you at the beginning, and we'll get into the details of the presentation now. Why Japan? Well, the fact that you're on this webinar probably means you already have some level of knowledge and at least interest in Japan, and for good reason. It's the third largest economy in the world. It's the fourth largest e-commerce marketplace, although I suspect we're more like 3, but with the weakening yen, that's not going to play very well. The UK has traditionally been ranked as the third largest. In any event, it is a huge market, 125 million consumers, 52 million households, and a growing e-commerce market. COVID has done very well for Japan, which was traditionally lagging behind the other major e-commerce marketplaces around the world, both in terms of size relative to retail sales, size relative to GDP, and overall compound annual growth rate. Those have all changed. Now Japan is beginning to move up the leaderboard in terms of total retail sales, and more importantly, year-to-year growth. When I mentioned about the platforms, really there are 3, although Yahoo is quite a distant third in terms of market share. But the interesting statistic here is that these 3 together combine for over 50% of the total e-commerce market share in Japan. And not only that, if you're trading on all 3 of them, you've pretty much got 100% marketplace coverage of anybody who has ever purchased online in Japan. Rakuten alone is probably 85%. If you add Amazon, you probably get to 95%. And if you add Yahoo, you probably get to 99.9% of all online shoppers. So it's a very efficient way to enter the marketplace. And we've typically advised our clients, if anything, start with Amazon, because you're probably already trading on Amazon. And then what needs to be done is simply opening the account, simply I say that relatively speaking, translating your product listings, setting your pricing and your launch strategy with marketing, deciding whether or not you're going to be working and selling cross-border or with inventory in Japan. And I'll touch on all of those things in more detail as we go ahead. But you see, you have a very consolidated platform or platforms that you can launch on. And you have customers who are highly educated, very affluent, and interested in overseas brands, but at the same time, skeptical about interacting and transacting with an overseas company. So the more you look like a domestic operation, I don't mean domestic company, you want to maintain your own brand image and unique attributes of being an American, or in this case, a Hawaiian company. But you want to be able to look, okay, yes, we're in country. Yes, we speak your language. Yes, we have local customer service. Yes, our inventory is in Japan. And if you have a problem with sizing or product, you can return it locally. Of course, you can still do many of those things with cross-border. We have clients that are strictly cross-border. We have clients that are strictly local inventory, and we have some that are doing a hybrid model. So the first key recommendation for me is get a good understanding how business is done here, what your product category is, who are your competitors, what kind of price ranges there are, what are the import restrictions or requirements for your products. Look for a good partner, somebody who could advise you ideally in your language, or at least that can communicate with you well, and help you set up so that you have the best chance of succeeding from the beginning. Over a longer period of time, most companies will succeed. The point here is not necessarily just pure success or failure, but how quickly you can succeed, and how many of the obstacles that many companies encounter are able to be avoided. Okay, I've talked a little bit about market entry approaches. In this case, you've got cross-border local, meaning you keep your inventory here, or you're shipping from a warehouse, I would assume, for example, in Hawaii. But there's also 3 business ways to do it, right? So you can actually do cross-border from Hawaii. You never even have to touch an agent or an operator in Japan. And pretty much there's 2 ways to do that. You can do it on Rakuten, you can do it on Amazon. As an American company, you can set up your own account on Rakuten. And of course, you can set up your Japan account on Amazon. You can ship from your home state, wherever your central warehouse is, for example. You can do all of that yourself, provided you have some level of Japanese language capabilities to translate and localize your brand shops, your product listings, but also to be able to provide some level of customer service in real time in language. The other way to do it, which is how many, I would say even most international companies do it, is to engage some type of agent who are experts at running and managing a shop on Amazon Japan, which has its own unique aspects. Of course, if you're operating successfully on your home Amazon account on Seller Central, or you have other international accounts, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. But there are very unique elements of how and what to do in Japan, and an experienced agent will be able to help you with that. And then the other one is on Rakuten. Now, Rakuten is a different beast. It is a very complicated marketplace to manage. They have an RMS system, which is analogous to Amazon's Seller Central. It's very complicated. It's a legacy system. You really have to be an expert to do that. You will definitely need a Japanese language, native language speaker to handle those operations, but you can do it yourself. But again, in most cases, that kind of very, very local knowledge is often in the hands of a good agent. And then lastly, we're basically talking about setting up a company here, which would be a local operation. And that would be typically in the case perhaps of a larger company, or a company that over the course of years has established a very firm and successful business here in Japan. Okay, another characteristic of the Japanese e-commerce marketplace, specifically on the e-commerce in Japan, specifically on the marketplaces, is the fact that the vast majority of commerce is done on mobile devices. I think the number is probably closer to 70, maybe even above 70% now. It has a higher conversion rate than PC. So please keep that in mind. You'll see one of the key recommendations is to optimize for mobile. And then the other kind of key insight is that, of course, Japan is a very unique market. There are products here that you would never find in America or other markets, or at least in high volume, like miso soup or some types of food products or other products, household products, like a shrine for a deceased relative, for example, that you obviously wouldn't find elsewhere. But the fact of the matter is, most of the popular products here, books, food, household goods, toys, all of if you rattle off that list of popular products, you'll find they're almost identical. So the fact is, you have a very high likelihood that your product category is going to be a popular or a familiar product category here. The challenge will be to present your products to the Japanese consumer in an informative and way that preserves your unique brand, but has some relevance to them. Okay, so the other recommendation here is in terms of how you might move from model to model. Getting set up on cross-border is the simplest and least expensive and least risky approach. So it's in some cases, I don't want to even say many, but in some cases, clients will start there, see if they have a viable business, find out which of their 80 SKUs are selling in Japan, and then focus those on a local operation. Other clients, and I have to be honest with me, the vast majority of my clients already have a Japan business model. They want in, they have a general idea of what products they want to start with. We give them the feedback, we go through the competitive analysis with them, and we look at which products are going to work best. And they want to move directly to the localized operation. And the reason for that, even though it's a higher cost and more risky model, because you're actually paying for product to come into Japan, is that the Japanese consumer responds much, much better to a 1 to 3 day delivery timeline without the risk of customs taxes and tariffs and being applied to them unexpectedly at the point of receiving the product, or having merchants to build in a much higher price, typically because it's much cheaper to ship in bulk to Japan than it is to ship on an individual to individual product basis. But both models are viable. Both models are well established, and most Japanese consumers are comfortable to a large extent with both of them. Okay, you're going to laugh when I say this is how easy it is to set up a cross-border model. This looks complicated, but it's actually not. Okay, there are 4 players. There's the overseas seller, which is on the left side. There's typically the service partner, and though, as I mentioned, in some cases, this might not be the case. There's somebody who needs to provide customer service. In this case, it would either be the service partner agent or the overseas seller themselves. And then there's the consumer. So it really is that simple. The model is established. It is not a difficult model to implement, and it's not a difficult model to manage, especially if you're working with a capable agent and operating partner. I mentioned about the product categories. These are the top product categories in Japan e-commerce, and I think you'll find them, as I said earlier, very, very familiar. Okay, the Japanese consumer is infamous, I don't know what the right word is, as being notoriously demanding. But what people don't always perhaps know is that they're also quite loyal. In some cases, some of our clients are enjoying a 25 to 30% reorder rate with satisfied customers. If you do something wrong, they'll be the first ones to write a review telling you exactly what you did wrong. If you did something right, they may not write something, but they may very well order again. So these are very challenging consumers, but if you are successful, you can have a very, very nice windfall from them. The key here, I think, is understanding what the caution and hesitancy a Japanese consumer might have with your product. Is it familiar to them or not? What are your return policies? How do you compare to perhaps a domestic product? So these are all very important things, as is country of origin. Now, as we've already heard from some of my fellow panelists today, the Hawaiian brand is exceptional in Japan. We all know that. It's probably one of the main reasons you're here. And the key is, how do we leverage that? So in your case, brand strength, country, in this case, state of origin or culture of origin, is extremely important and very much on your side. So some of the key recommendations here: provide a wealth of product information. Japanese consumers are extremely literate. And if you look at the product listings on Rakuten, you'll see they're very extensive. Now, Amazon, not nearly as much. Simply, that's how they organize their marketplace. But even then, you'll still find usually quite a bit of information. So the more information you have available, the better. Of course, we talked about offering Japanese language customer service, a liberal return policy that can be done in country, even if you're doing cross-border. And the shorter and less expensive the delivery, the better. We tend to charge a modest delivery price for low-value orders. We typically charge 780 yen, which now is less than $7, but for the most part, at that normal 110 exchange rate, was about $7. And we have a incentive. So if you purchase over $35 or 4,000 yen worth of products, you get free shipping, and that seems to work for us. I won't go through this in detail. You'll have access to the deck. This just basically tells you all the reasons why Japanese consumers might not order from you as a foreign entity with a international website or as a cross-border merchant. Okay, now let's get into the really kind of the guts of the presentation, which is the big three. In many ways, Rakuten and Yahoo are quite similar. They're what are called shopping malls, online shopping malls. So you have the opportunity to create, in some cases, very elaborate brand shops. And we've done that for some of our larger brand clients. We do it for all of them, but some of our larger brand clients have really looked at how they present their brand on the marketplace, which Amazon has begun doing. It's still very much product centric. They have created a brand registry and brand shops. It's not nearly as effective in terms of presenting a brand as it is on Rakuten or Yahoo, but obviously Amazon is moving in that direction. Amazon Seller Central on Japan is in English. So you can operate your Japan business in English, which is very good. Rakuten and Yahoo is not the case. Everything is in Japanese. The commissions that you pay are fairly similar between Amazon and Rakuten, averaging out at around 10 or 11%. But with Amazon, as you may know, it really varies by product category. For Rakuten, it really varies only by your volume. The more sales you do, the less commission you pay. And for Yahoo, there is no commission. It's very interesting. They have the lowest commission structure. It's only 6.5% of sales, but they rely on an advertising model. So in order for you to get your products even anywhere near awareness on their platform, you have to spend money on marketing. So in that sense, it's quite different. Rakuten and Amazon allow cross-border sales. Yahoo does not. You neither need a agent here or you need to set up your own operations. And on that note, though, we have found with Amazon that the cross-border model has an element of danger to it in the sense that, well, actually they both do. But with overseas shipping, delays are common. Lost items are, or I don't say common, they happen. So you have to be very sensitive, because if you start getting complaints about fulfillment or misfulfillment, delays, your account status can be in danger. So it is something to keep in mind. You really need a good partner for that kind of delivery, which typically means a paid service, which typically means more expense for you and or the client. So there are complications to cross-border, but they can be mitigated. And then, of course, Amazon has what's called FBA, which is fulfillment by Amazon, which is you ship your products here, put it in the Amazon warehouse, and they basically handle the operating side of things for you, including basic customer service, not product information customer service, but where's my order customer service. So one of the recommendations here is if you want to start by, I guess, tipping your toe in the water, start with Amazon Japan, see if you have a business, and then perhaps expand to the other marketplaces. There's a little more information about the marketplaces themselves, whereas Rakuten, in my opinion, and I've seen so much different data. Some say Amazon is bigger than Rakuten, others say Rakuten is bigger than Amazon. Generally speaking, it's acknowledged that Rakuten is the largest platform in marketplace in Japan, typically about 25 to 27% of the marketplace. Amazon is somewhere around 20%, and Yahoo is somewhere around 10%. So if you add all that together, it's somewhere around 55%. Now, who's bigger, it really doesn't matter. In some cases, Amazon is your better play, depending on what type of products you have. But for the most part, Amazon is the market leader in most of the major product categories. So I say this because even if you're going to start with Amazon alone, having a plan to expand into Rakuten is essential, because the incremental cost of doing so should be significantly less than the incremental revenue and profits that you'll make as a result of trading on multiple marketplaces. Okay, this is the checklist time, and this is kind of the guidebook for you. What steps you should take in preparation of entering the market. The first one is the market research. I talked a little bit about it. Know your product category, know who your competitors are, look at the pricing, understand what your import requirements are, find a good partner here who can help guide you through it if you're so inclined, and then evaluate the opportunity. It's impossible to predict exactly how much product you will sell of which SKU, but some back of the envelope calculations, general trends, general results in ROI can be made, and you can have an intelligent approach to the marketplace. The second one is looking at your products. Well, if you're doing cross-border, there is no import product processing. You just have to make sure you don't have a banned product, which I would tend to doubt you do. But you do have to look at costs, the cost of taxes or duties that you either embed in the pricing itself of the product, so there's no surprises for the consumer, or you alert them to the fact that there may be additional taxes and duties applied. For the local fulfillment model, I'm an importer. I'm a registered importer in Japan. We have a liquor license. We have food license. We can import just about anything except for cosmetics and skincare products and medicaments and nutritional supplements. Those are the four that we do not have the licensing rights to do. And there are four of the most complex product categories in Japan. That said, most products have some type of requirements. In food, you have to have a detailed list of the ingredients and the manufacturing process. It's a lot of work. I'll be very, very honest with you. It's time consuming. It's sometimes costly, but we're good at it. And we can help minimize that process, but prepare yourself for it. Prepare yourself for whoever you use to say to you, I need more information of this, or here's a tax that you didn't know about that you're going to have to pay. You have to work that into your product. We've learned this I want to say the hard way, but it is one important part of the process. And in some cases, you'll need to have your products tested. For food, not typically the case. For products that are like kitchenware, it'll have to be tested. Product that's applied to the skin has to be tested. So it really is going to depend on what product you have. Storefront development, I talked about the rich product listings that are common here. Localization is not just language translation. It really is what aspects of your product will appeal to the Japanese consumer. How are they unique? Which ones do we want to highlight? We have a home appliance manufacturer that has a tower fan, and we worked with them. What are the key elements of what are the key product attributes that we want to focus on that are either unique to your product or better than other products in the same category? So how you present yourself is very important. And the way we typically do it is there's the brand, there's your categories if you have multiple categories, and then at the bottom there's your detailed product listings. And having that type of hierarchy usually works, even though the majority of the transactions that we see or visits are at the product level. Probably 80% are at the product level. But then again, 20% go to the category or the brand level. So having some type of attractive presentation there is also important. I've talked about this. I don't know that I need to add much. Again, as an American company, you are lucky in that you can set up your own Amazon account. You can still have an agent operate it as long as they have access to your RMS login. But you as an American company have really good access to both Amazon and Rakuten, although not Yahoo. I talked about customs clearance. There are charges depending on your product category. Honey, for example, has a very high duty. Alcohol, not so much, but there is a duty that is in addition to the 8% that's charged on 8% consumption tax that's charged on food products, 10% on all other products. I want to add that if you are an importer, you'll know this. Sorry, if you are an exporter, you'll know this. It's on the declared price. So that 10% consumption tax is not on your selling price. It's going to be on the declared price, which often is 30% or so of the anticipated selling price. So the net impact on you can often be just a relatively small single-digit addition to what your normal cost of goods are. Of course, you have to ship it here if you're going to do the local market, and I can tell you painfully from experience, and many of you may know this, international shipping costs have gone through the roof, and delivery times have really been extended. So planning in this case and getting an anticipated cost of shipping, not for today, but what might be 2 or 3 months from now, is very much suggested. Okay, I think we've covered this. You can open your own accounts on Amazon and Rakuten. This is an example of how busy things are. This is on the left is just an example of a watch shop on Rakuten. As somebody who, if you can't read Japanese, if you can't read kanji, you'll think this is quite a mess. But to the Japanese consumer's eyes, this is exactly what they're used to. So, if and when you end up developing your product listings or your brand shop, don't be surprised if it looks like something that would maybe drive you crazy, but would very much meet the expectations of the Japanese consumer. So if you are going to pursue a local inventory model, you'll either use Amazon FBA, or you use Rakuten Super Logistics, or you'll do what most of our clients do, is you'll use a third-party warehouse, 3PL warehouse that we manage as the main storage, because these are the most competitive pricing when it comes to bulk storage. We then typically ship products to Amazon FBA where storage fees are high, but being able to participate in FBA provides a tremendous competitive advantage. And then typically our 3PL warehouse will deliver directly to Rakuten, or if our client has a website, we'll deliver to those customers. In some cases, we have used Rakuten Super Logistics where it made sense, but that's also an option. And then financial management. All of the Rakuten and Amazon will give you the option of which bank account you want your net proceeds to be sent to. And by net, I mean they take out their commissions, they take out their the marketing spend. If you're using FBA or Rakuten Super Logistics, they'll take out your logistics charges and whatever other myriad of little tiny charges they're going to extract from you, and you'll have a net amount. And that'll either go, if you work with an agent, you can have, for example, Rakuten pay to the agent's bank account to cover your local expenses, and have Amazon repatriate the funds back to Hawaii, which is the normal. If you're using an agent, it's the normal model, because then you're not getting money taken from yen into dollar, and then from dollar back into yen to pay your yen-based expenses. If you're using a 3PL warehouse, for example, or you need to pay an agent, or you're going to do external marketing or whatever else. So that's pretty much how the financial management goes. And now I'm going to kind of step outside of the marketplaces. Okay, so establishing a local website, especially if you have a powerful brand, or if your brand is known in Japan, you already have some type of business here, is something that should be considered. And once you have that website, of course, external marketing using Google AdWords or using social media to drive traffic is essential. And then last but not least, and this ties back to the great work the state government is doing in terms of helping facilitate trade show activities. Looking at wholesale and retail expansion is great, because it ends up becoming incremental business for you, more brand support overall in the marketplace. And those two are very, very positive developments. And being able to then create some type of omni-channel business where you're coordinating your activities between a website, your marketplace activities, and an offline sales channel is really ultimately what the ultimate objective would be. And I certainly hope all of you get to that level of business here. I think I've covered most of the recommendations. I've already told you, I think, enough about BPI. We offer this e-commerce solution, basically, and this is not hyperbole. You get us your products for our warehouse. You give us your product assets so that we can build the brand shop and the product listings. We basically do all the rest of the work. And unlike any of our Japanese competitors or counterparts, we're the only one that can communicate in native language with you. Daniel and I are the only two that are non-Japanese on our staff. We both speak Japanese. I've been here a bit longer than Daniel, but he's a really experienced and very capable e-commerce professional. And we have an excellent team of Japanese designers, translators, operators, marketers that are in-house. We do almost all of our work in-house, which we're very proud of. And we offer unique services that our Japanese competitors cannot. So this is the solution. You can see it's kind of soup to nuts. I'd be happy to talk to you about our services if you're interested. I'd also be happy to talk to the Hawaiian government if they're interested in looking at a program that helps consolidate multiple merchants and help facilitate a Hawaiian showroom or showcase in Japan. With that, I'll thank you and look forward to your questions later on.
Great, thanks a lot, Mark. Now let's jump back to Kanzo Nara at the I Do Web School. Hopefully we have his camera functioning.
Hello, hi, Rob.
Oh, there he is. Hi.
Back.
Hi. Very briefly, I'm going to share your screen or your website again, and then you can jump in and talk about what you do. Here's the I Do Web School on King Street in Honolulu, and Kanzo's contact information. You can get it on the website here, but he'll explain everything to you. So please go ahead, Kanzo.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Thank you for inviting me today. It's always a pleasure to be with these members and speaking to the High Step program at DBET. So as introduced, my name is Kanzo Nara. I'm president of QP Web and I Do Web School. So we originally started in 2007 for making bilingual websites. So we make either Japanese websites for English customers or English websites for Japanese customers. And a lot of times we do both at the same time. And sometimes we dip into Korean and Chinese as well. So we do a lot of multilingual website development. And I personally specialize in bilingual SEO. So I not only make the websites, but I do a lot of marketing and keyword research on products and services for online websites. Okay.
Kanzo-san, just quick reminder, not everybody may understand what is SEO.
Oh, okay. So that's a search engine optimization for those in Japan or Japanese participants. That's kensaku engine saitekika, which means when you type in a keyword, your product or service or keyword gets recognized better for the search engines. So a lot of times the work I do is towards the search engine robot. And a lot of the material I'll be presenting is not what makes sense to a person, but what makes sense to a robot. So keep that in mind when I look at this. Okay. Okay, so how to make bilingual websites. We're going to start from the very beginning. The very beginning is there's two aspects to making a multilingual website. First is obviously the language. Next is region. When I say this, it kind of gets techie, but for example, are you making a website for Japanese who reside in India? Or are you making an English website for Americans living in Canada type of thing? So not only do you have a bilingual language, but you need to consider the fact where that language group resides in before you start making your website. And obviously, with any website, one of the most important elements will be your domain. I'm sure you've seen these type of domains. I'm going to break it up into three major parts. One is the traditional one is .com. Second part for Japan is .co.jp, which is company in Japan. And the third one you see on the right is called a subdomain, which is you can use your original domain and add a separate one to the top part. Okay, before you proceed, remember, try not to be cheap when you're selecting your domain. You want to do it the right way. I'm going to go with the worst case scenario of how my clients usually end up in the wrong area, and we have to dig our way out and try to fix it. Is the third one. If you look at the very bottom one, is a website using a subdirectory. This isn't a new domain whatsoever. This is a website within a website. What happens here is when a search engine searches for a website, it's going to determine what the prominent language is. And whenever you have Japanese and English will come out to be the prominent language because Japanese use kanji and katakana, and it's a condensed form of language. So it'll just count the characters and say that, oh, that's an English language website, so we're going to just direct people to the English one. So you do not want to do the third version of example.com/jp. You want to do one of the two at the top, which is example.jp, or you can do SEO.jp, which is an entirely different domain, and the search engines will know that it's for that specific country. If you look at large companies like Toyota or McDonald's, they all have a .co.jp or a JP website telling the consumers that they're looking for a website that's geo-targeted for your specific country. The second one is a subdomain. So this one is JP added at the beginning of your domain. This is actually a good place to start if you want to reduce costs, because you don't have to purchase a new domain. You can kind of piggyback off of your main domain. So it's a good place to get started. But if you're going to invest more time and effort and of course money into your website, I would say go with the first one, which is going with the .jp or .co.jp or whatever other country you are targeting. Okay, Mark went into this a little bit about site design. I'd like to show a more in-depth aspect of how the design portion looks. You probably saw this previously in Mark's presentation, but Japanese websites are very heavy in content. There's a lot more text information there. There's a lot more explanation on products. There's also a lot of seasonal information, you know, especially because Japan likes to promote different things at springtime, fall time, summertime, and so on. And another big aspect of Japanese web design is banner ads. You've noticed this on Rakuten or even Amazon Japan, is people like to bundle up a lot of information with graphic and text and create what's called a banner ad. And this is very popular across any web channels in Japan. And you will find it on almost every major website in Japan, including large ones like Yahoo Japan or other news channels. So keeping that in mind, I'd like to show a few examples of websites. Okay, here's McDonald's US. This is the corporate website for McDonald's in 2022. So very straightforward. You have your logo, you have your header navigation. They have what they're selling, the main promotion they have, which is free McNuggets, and you know they have one call to action button saying download the app. Very straightforward. This is US design. Here is India's McDonald's website. This gets even more simple. It just tells, it asks you what part of India you're in, and then they're going to direct you to more specified information. There's hardly any information here, but this is India's corporate website. Okay, now this is Japan's web design. And believe it or not, this is only the header section. So the website actually goes on for another good like 18 scrolls after this. So this is the header section. And as you can tell, it's a slideshow with 4 different information. You have your header navigation, you have your logo at the top. And then this is a banner ad, prime example of a banner ad. So one banner ad, they're showing 3 different products. And you know, it's getting close to dinner time here in Hawaii, so this Giga Big Mac looks pretty good. And I've always wondered why US doesn't have this, but the information says here that Giga Big Mac is so popular that it's running out at stores, so hurry and go buy it, you know. Then the next slide goes to chicken nuggets. The next slide goes to a different drink that they're promoting. So there's a lot of spoon-fed information here. They don't want you to search for anything. They want you to find everything that's available on the website right away. Okay, so now that we have a domain and we understand what web design is different from US and Japan, we want to start focusing on the SEO and pay-per-click portion of marketing in Japan. Most of you are familiar, and if you have a website, you've probably dipped into any one of these 3 aspects. But we're looking at PPC, which is pay-per-clicks, SEO, which is search engine optimization, and SNS, which is social network services. For PPC in Japan, the prominent one is actually Yahoo Japan, which is also called sponsored search. Google Ads is always a very good way to go, because not only does it's only by what you pay, but it actually has an organic element to it. So if you have good ads, good keywords, good content on your website, you can start advertising at a minimal cost. SEO is a must these days and age. You know, you can't just have a website and expect people to find it. You have to have a website structured in order to get good results. And this is going to be contradictory to Japanese web design. And I run into problems. It's not a problem, it's a conflict with my clients all the time is Japanese customers want to have banner ads. The demerit of having a banner ad is it's a graphic. So there's no text content on it, meaning the search engine doesn't pick up on it. So you want to watch out while using these banner ads without diminishing your organic natural content on your website. And another prominent aspect of SEO in Japan is business blogs. Believe it or not, 32% of all blogs on the internet worldwide is in Japanese. The Japanese are the most blog-loving nation in the world. People write blogs personally, famous people write blogs, corporations write blogs, businesses write blogs, specialists write blogs. You need to write blogs. It's the best way to get new customers and introduce people to your service or product in depth. And I'm going to go into more detail for the social media section. Okay, this is e-commerce sales by country that I know Mark went into some detail about this, and Japan is rising, as you can see. And the interesting part is US and China actually flipped over in the last 2 years. 2 years ago, US was doing better, but now China is leading in e-commerce. Yeah, global spending for projections for 2021 and 2022, all the way up to 2024. This is a graph of how e-commerce is going. Obviously, a lot of e-commerce is more efficient and is more trustworthy on third-party websites. But what you want to factor in is when you do big deals on e-commerce, which isn't like consumer to consumer, but you can also do business to business on websites. And a lot of times my customers who do e-commerce, I advise them to set up a wholesaler page. So not only, instead of just buying one product, you have, let's say, a small, medium-sized business in Japan who want to buy hundreds or thousands of products from you directly, but don't know how to get in touch with you. This is a great way to start this. Okay, going into some of the SEO portion that I mentioned before regarding the language is many of you are probably familiar in Japan that Japan has 3 different types of alphabet. One is called kanji, one is hiragana, and one is katakana. You can see an example here of how it looks. They both mean the same thing. Right now, this says ryoko, 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 which means travel, 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 but it's spelled differently. And depending on how the sentence is structured, you want to use a different set of alphabets. So you can't just run Japanese language through a Google Translate and get the correct one. Sometimes it spits out the wrong one. So you want to make sure that when you look for a web specialist, they're not only fluent in the speaking language, but they're also fluent in the written language. This is very important when you're creating content for a Japanese website. Okay. Another thing to factor in for pay-per-click and search engine marketing is, Japan spends a lot more advertising for small, medium companies than maybe possibly here in the US. So when you're advertising on PPC, let's say Google or even Yahoo sponsored search, is you want to focus on what time of day your consumers are looking for and their gender and age and so on. And I'll get into that in the next slide. Okay, so here we go to social media. Social media is a great place to promote your business because obviously it's free to set up in your account, and most people know how to operate these because they're major platforms this day and age. But what you want to be careful is where to invest your time in. So just because you like Instagram and Instagram's popular here in the US, you're going to say, I'm going to do Instagram in Japan, but that might not be the case, whether it's in Korea or China. Depending on what country it is, different platforms are more popular. For example, if you look here, the #1 platform popular in Japan is Line. The second one's Twitter, Instagram. And Facebook is #4. So it's very interesting. Like if you look at the global one, TikTok's not even in there, but in Japan, TikTok's #5. So you want to focus on which platform you want to invest your time in. Okay, I believe Mark was talking about this a little bit too, but to be specific, 83% of all preliminary searches done in Japan is done on the smartphone. meaning that, if your product doesn't show up the first time and isn't mobile friendly, you're missing out on 83% of potential web viewers. For the second search and third search, it starts going down. I think the second search is around 51% mobile and 49% PC. The third search is prominently done on desktop. So that's very interesting. Okay. This ties into what time to advertise and where to factor in, where people are looking for your product. So let's say you have your website done, you have good Japanese design content, you have your SEO in place. Now you want to focus on when they're searching for your product. A lot of times in Japan, it's a different culture when it comes to on a daily routine base. A lot of people in Japan commute for very long periods of time. It's not uncommon for a Japanese businessman, Sarariman, to transit for 45 minutes to an hour one way to work. And what's happening during this time is, people are spending time on their smartphones. They're looking for, their favorite news, favorite products. And unlike here in the US, Japanese companies are more strict on what you can do during work time. So not that many people are going to be playing around on your computer while they're working. People are very focused at work, and they're probably not going to be searching for what restaurant to go to in Hawaii, or what burger to eat in Hawaii type of thing. So they're going to be searching for things in transit, lunchtime, which is going to be on mobile devices. Then at the very end, if they find something they like, they're going to remember it, bookmark it, and then they're going to might purchase it in the evening, which a lot of the desktop functions come in handy. So it's important to have a good landing page when you're making your website. This is true for any website, but not only Japanese, but a few elements you want to keep in mind is this 2-second rule and the 2-swipe rule. If your web page doesn't load in 2 seconds, they're not gonna view it anymore. If all the prominent information isn't there in 2 swipes, you've lost their interest. So when you're making a website and a landing page, you need to consider these 2 elements: 2 seconds and 2 swipes. The good news is though, in Japan, the internet speed is a lot faster than it is here in the US. So you can have more design elements or more multimedia functions in your website, and it's not going to be a dragging experience. Here in the US, we have to design websites on a kilobyte basis, which is we have to optimize pictures as small as possible. But in Japan, you got some more wiggle room. You can do some more cool designs for Japanese websites. Okay, a few things you want to do for your website to make it more global and more friendly for especially the Japanese market is adding a currency converter. As mentioned by Mr. Steven, the currency is always changing depending on the economic climate. And sometimes it's kind of hard for people who aren't news savvy to figure out what a product is. Not everybody follows what the Dow is doing right now every day, So if your product is, let's say, more pricey, if it's over $100, $200, even $500, if the currency changes, it's a big difference for the consumer. But if you have a currency converter, it's a user-friendly experience. It's not just saying this is my price in my country, you buy it in my price, but it's kind of letting them know that, for your currency, it'll be different. Here's our example, how it might be today. And, it's being honest with your, potential customers. So it's a good thing to have. Okay, the second thing you should have for a Japanese website is you should have a good contact form. This is a contact form for a Japanese website. This is actually for a hospital, but if you look at a lot of Japanese websites, they're very detailed in their contact form. And Japanese consumers, they don't find it a negative to put in information. You want to provide as much information as possible so you can get back to them with sufficient information. To do this, you need to first, come up with a detail-oriented form so you can get in touch with your consumer. And also, you will need a bilingual staff who can read the information that comes in. This is actually very good. Going back to what I was saying about a wholesaler on your website, this is a good place to get potential wholesalers. So you wanna get information from them, like their company name, what title they have, what quantity they're interested in buying from you. If you look at websites here in the US, a lot of contact forms are usually your name, email address, and then you send the email. you want to gather more information from them so you can jump right into negotiations with them. And this is what the Japanese wholesaler and consumers are looking for when they contact you. Okay, these are some data on why people won't buy your product if it's in a different language. 65% prefer their own language. This is relatively obvious. 67% will tolerate a mixed language. 73% want product reviews in their language. This is probably the most important part. It's probably the hardest one to achieve, but you want to get comments of your product from native speakers. And this is probably a good place to go to for Amazon and Rakuten because you can build up good reviews within that platform already. Okay, I kind of went through that fast, but I know Rob has more gifted and good specialists talking after this. So I want to thank everybody for listening in. And if you're interested in more information, once again, my name is Kanzo Nara. I'm from Imagine Web Creation and I Do Web School. You can request a meeting with me or request more information at this location here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kanzo-san. That was great as always. Real quick, I'm going to jump to the browser again. Well, let me first introduce Brian Suzuki from Hawaiian Air Cargo. He's extremely experienced in shipping to Japan by air. And I think that he's another critical asset for our companies here in Hawaii regarding shipping or any kind of logistics activity to Japan. He's helped hundreds of Hawaii companies ship in the past. And I think that it's important to have somebody like Brian in your toolbox as an exporter to Japan, because I feel like a lot of our Hawaii companies wait too long to think about the shipping costs, and they wait too long to work on their own packaging and whether that packaging has any sort of shipment requirements that are needed. So I strongly advise you to talk to an expert like Brian ahead of time and show them your products and what is special about your products and how you feel they might be unique and how they need to be shipped and the packaging accordingly. So with that, let me bring in Brian.
Hi, Rob. Can you hear me?
How are you?
I'm fine. I just hope you can pick up on what I'm saying. But I just like to make it short because I know it's late in the day. But a couple of things. Shipping to, oh, by the way, Rob, did you get my website? I mean, not my website, but my, it doesn't have to be because I'm going to cut it real short. Basically, we have ocean and air going to Japan. And right now, ocean freight, of course, you all know, you have to have a full container load. And it might take a while to get to Japan, but believe it or not, people just don't think about it. And as Mark had said, actually, it's not that expensive to ship to Japan from here. I know the flight is expensive, but you know, in out of Hawaii, well, let me put it this way. We have all these flights. Prior to the pandemic, we had 21 daily flights to Japan, different cities, Fukuoka, Osaka, Okansai, Nagoya, Sapporo. We had also Tokyo and Narita and Haneda. 21 daily. Today we have maybe just one daily flight, but we started to build up. We have a lot more space. First of all, the flights are coming in, not with passengers from Japan, but it's coming with cargo because the Trans-Pacific flights are all full. The Trans-Pacific ocean freight is all hung up or it's backed up on the West Coast. So at any rate, we have all these flights coming in from Japan loaded with cargo, full. And then it comes to Hawaii, it's being transferred to flights going to the mainland. And it goes back empty because we don't have a whole lot of shipments going on. But because of the fact that these flights are going back with empty bellies, no cargo, we negotiate some really good price. As a matter of fact, just for your information and for all of you, you have to shop around because the air cargo industry is not regulated. And I'm not trying to say it's scary, but it's the buyer beware market. And it's actually on just off the top. What's being shipped to Hawaii from Japan, it is 1/3 the price for shipping going back to Japan. 1/3. It's cheaper than flying a product from, say, Incheon in Korea to Osaka. It's people just can't understand it. So when you go to Japan, people always say, I don't want to ship from Hawaii. It's too far. It's going to cost an arm and a leg. But not so. I've had customers that tell me, Brian, don't tell my competitors I'm shipping and buying products from Hawaii. I say, who are your competitors? Because they should know, and these people know once they start shipping, it's a very, very a good way. And then the shipping cost is not expensive. As a matter of fact, if you compare shipping from Honolulu to Tokyo or Honolulu, Osaka, it's actually price per pound cheaper than going from Honolulu to LA or San Francisco. It's hard to imagine, but that's what I'm saying. You gotta shop around. And people do all kinds of tricks in our business. That's why I said another thing too is we talked about, like Rob talked about packaging. If you package your items so bulky, you may end up paying for the space it takes up. And we call it dimensional weight charges as opposed to actual weight. And different carriers, the formula for international, we have the length times width times height in inches, you divide by 166. I just wanted to go real quick, like, you don't have to write it all up. You can call me for clarifications. But normal in our industry is 166 as a divisor. Some people use 139 and other people use 94. I mean, it's a huge difference. If you have a number, length times width times height, and you divide by 94 versus 166, the dimensional weight factor is going to be much higher than the person that's using 94. And that's the kind of stuff that you have to be aware. I did an audit, and I do offer audits to anybody shipping already. By the way, I wanted to thank Jimmy because his shipments have really jumped up. But also, when I say thank you, we don't have as much tourists coming in from Japan. But believe it or not, my tonnage report from last year, actually from pre-pandemic, we have tripled our tonnage from pre-pandemic. Actually, from last year, we're getting already by this month, June, we're getting to almost double last year's tonnage report. It's just that people in Japan wanting to buy Hawaii products. And so I'm saying for all of you that are interested, this is a chance, and then don't let shipping costs be a big downer for you. Shop around and see what's gonna happen, and we can do your product. Another thing that you have to remember, to get these cheaper rates, the carriers require payment on this side. The shipper, it has to be paid by the shipper, or this way. We have customers in Japan, they're big distributors, and what we do is, as soon as we get the shipment ready to turn over to the carrier, we send them an email, and they send us a okay to use a credit card. And so they pay us by credit card so that we can get it paid beforehand. And that way they can get away. But like I say, if you send it freight collect, it's going to cost you 3 times what you would normally pay. So, you know, whatever it is, it's really difficult. We do work with agents, Japanese shipping agents, and they collect a certain amount, but we pay, when we charge our agents our cost, and we build up a profit margin between the two companies. But at the same time, they have to pay us on this side for the freight. So anyway, other than that, here I just got these modes of transportation, but I'm going to go ahead and just pretty much end it saying that when you go to different places, today I see flights on Hawaiian going to Fukuoka. They have Sapporo, a couple of flights a week. They have flights going to, of course, Narita and Kansai. And we, again, there's no cargo really going out, and that's why we can command some really, really favorable prices. So keep that in mind and shop around, and don't just take my word for it. You can call my my office, and I think the first page had the, again, this page that you're seeing shipping rates is a selling point. And sometimes people, it's hard to convince, and you have to tell them, try it, see what it is. And of course, to get the products there, going to these gift shows or trade shows, you should visit or talk to me so that I can give you some idea of what the price is going to be, so you can actually quote them prices, and maybe not delivered, but at least to the nearest airport, because a lot of these importers have their own customs brokers, they have their own means of getting the product from, say, the airport or from the port to their facilities. So they can do that on their own. Meanwhile, to get it to the airport or to the port, that's the main thing that they need. So we can help you with that. But these photos, I've been to all these shows, and it's really, really something that you potential shippers should take advantage of. You can get it at a very inexpensive way. So Joanne, Jamie and DBED and Department of Ag, they all work together. So anyway, I'll just go. That should be my big thing. Try to shop around, because freight charges change, and it's really scary if you're not aware. And I'm not saying that people just want to take advantage. People just don't know any better than that. You have to shop around. You have to check it out for yourself. So that's my word for today. Okay, we can go on. Any other? Rob, did you need anything else?
No, that was great. I just want to make sure that people understand that you exist and you're out there and you're able to help them. And you can find them the best possible rates to get the product to Japan.
Right, but by the way, you mentioned it's not Hawaiian Air Cargo, it's Hawaii Air Cargo.
I know. As soon as I said that,
time.
I knew it. As soon as I said it, I felt bad about it.
Oh, no problem. As a matter of fact, a lot of the carriers, Hawaiian, Japan Airlines, all these other carriers, because they don't like to deal with all the particulars of the shipping documentation, we have to also check out, because of TSA requirements, we have to also check do background checks, do a lot of things that the airlines don't want to do. So we end up getting calls from the airlines, getting calls so they're looking to ship certain places. And, of course, we like to give that shipment back to the carrier that referred it to us. So there's a lot of things that have to go before you even ship. So please call me, and then I can go over some of the details. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We're running a bit over time. I'm the next speaker, so I'm going to go through my presentation even faster than Brian did, and then we'll jump to general Q&A. What I'm planning to talk about is marketing in Japan, sales and marketing in Japan. After a long career of doing it in various industries, I've honed it down to just a few key slides for you to think about. When I initially drafted this presentation and teaching courses at the universities here in Hawaii on sales and international business and what have you, it was a bit different time because we had a lot of tourists coming in here. And that will start again later this year, probably in the third quarter, but certainly by the fourth quarter and Thanksgiving and Christmas time. And I bring that up because there were really 2 points of sale when trying to sell to a Japanese consumer. One point of sale being in Japan, and that's largely a Japanese yen transaction, or of course, if they're buying through an e-commerce platform, you could receive dollars, but the Japanese customer is paying in Japanese yen, and that's largely 100% in Japanese language. Kanzo and Mark are intimately involved in that. Now, the second point is the point of sale is in Hawaii, and that's quite a bit different. That's a US dollar transaction, and it's probably a mixed language, English and Japanese, although if you can do more Japanese, I think you'll have a higher rate of success. So the point of that is that I've developed this marketing cycle for visitors coming. This is largely from Japan, but you could also use it for Korean or Canadian or what have you. I just think that for Japan, this has proven to be incredibly effective, where if you start at the top and you go around the cycle clockwise, we have the market segment, touch them in Japan through social media. We have magazine ads here in Hawaii or even in Japan before they arrive. Tourist buys the product, they like the product, they take it back to Japan as omiyage, and then the tourist tries to buy refills already in Japan, either through your own Japanese language website or through Amazon or through Rakuten. And we've seen the companies that can implement this fairly simple plan successfully have done extremely well. So just very, very briefly, what is marketing? The 4 Ps of marketing are product, price, place, and promotion. There's nothing new there, but I'd be happy to go through it with anybody at a later time in more detail. So jumping ahead from the product point, I think that our companies here to be successful in the Japanese market have to really play up the Hawaii-ness, if there is such a word, of their products, made with aloha, made with freshness in Hawaii. And that doesn't just have to be food products that are fresh, clothing and jewelry or whatever, using a lot of the marketing that our beautiful state gives us in terms of backgrounds with sunny skies and beaches and breezes and the palm trees and what have you. This is fantastic free marketing that we get constantly. I think that our Hawaii companies could be served really well by understanding the Japanese consumers' sales cycles and how a lot of Japanese buying is very much still in the middle of 2022, driven by sales and the seasonal sales that come about in the natural Japanese year. Omiyage is a concept that I'm sure all of our attendees have heard before, but I think it requires a little bit more research and understanding how your products can fill this omiyage need. And even it could be omiyage in Japan. Japanese consumer buys it in Japan to give to somebody already in Japan. It doesn't have to necessarily be somebody who has visited Hawaii and then are going back to Japan. However, that's probably 90% of the transactions for the omiyage is when a visitor comes to Hawaii, they buy your product, they take it back and give it to somebody that's important to them, and then that person likes the product and they'd like to buy more of it. How do they get that easily? And as we've talked about today, you could do it through Amazon or Rakuten or some other platform, even your own website, Japanese bilingual website that could sell them that product. But that's something we need to plan ahead of time. I also think it's extremely important for our Hawaii companies to understand the packaging. I talked about it briefly when I introduced Brian Suzuki from Hawaii Air Cargo, but I really would like you to take away that your packaging is incredibly important. I use a picture of this young lady here with the bags, but that's extremely common. You cannot give a gift to somebody else in Japan unless it's in a bag, and it would be great if your products came with bags already. Logoed bags would be even better, and one of your Japanese language business cards inside with perhaps a discount code or something showing how the customer can buy your products again easily. But packaging is a fantastic market in and of itself in Japan. The other critical thing you have to do is segment your market. This is sort of marketing 101, but it's extremely true that when you're thinking about selling to Japan, the entire Japanese market is very unlikely to be your target market. 126 million people in Japan, probably there's about 100,000 of those are really your target market. And you need to segment that and find out exactly who is your target market and then address all of your marketing messages to that market segment, and do not worry about people who are not in your target market segment. So that could be, this is just an example, that could be a female between the age of 25 and 40 who went to undergraduate education, lives in a big city like Tokyo or Osaka, and has 2 children. Okay, that's specific, but that's where you need to be thinking and trying to find exactly who is your target market segment. I also think, I bring this up because I think that our Hawaii companies have a very good opportunity to sell to older consumers in Japan. When you think about, there's over 100,000 people in Japan that are over 100 years old, and over 30% of the population is over the age of 65. That's a fantastic market for the right kinds of products. And it's called quality of life, or QOL, in Japan. And there's a lot of products and services that are targeted at that older silver haired market. I'm just going to jump through these things very quickly. Our previous speakers have talked quite a bit about the foreign exchange rate, and I'm going to share a screen very quickly here that I think it's very important to understand where we are on this, because let's see, can you see the X rates? This is what the Japanese yen has done against the dollar in the past year. And so we're up over 134 yen per dollar today. Just as an aside, when I first started my career in international sales around 1990 in Japan, I remember it being 78 yen per dollar. So that means when you take a dollar to the bank in Japan and you exchange it for yen, you get 78. Now you take that same dollar to the bank in Japan, they give you 134 yen. So that's great for an American traveler going to Japan with US dollars. But on the flip side, it's not so nice for a Japanese person coming to the US and trying to exchange their yen for dollars. They get much less. So currently right now, our products from Hawaii feel extremely expensive to Japanese consumers if using the current exchange rate. So we have to keep that in mind and think about that. So if you travel to the Tokyo International Gift Show, you will think, wow, Japan's really cheap. I heard it was always very expensive. However, when the customers are trying to buy your products and they're doing the calculation on their phone about what your products cost, they might say, ooh, that's a lot more expensive than I anticipated. So most economists suggest that this trend will increase. It has macroeconomic roots in that the Federal Reserve in the US has raised interest rates a lot, which means that Japanese investment companies are pumping money into the US to take advantage of higher interest rates in the US. And so all of that money coming from Japan into the US causes this inflationary effect on the dollar and yen ratio. So please pay attention to this. Keep an eye on the yen, or if you're interested in exporting to any other market, Korea or China or Germany or Brazil, where have you, keep an eye on that currency too, because these currency effects and foreign exchange certainly affect buyer and consumer behavior, particularly when importing products from a country where their currency is temporarily deflated against, as is the case right now with Japan and the US dollar. So I'm going to leave it at that because way over time here, and I have much more of my marketing presentation to go through, but I will include it in the folder that I'll link all of our attendees to that have joined the meeting today, and you will get a link from me that has all of our presentations in there. And please feel free to contact me or contact any of our speakers if you have any questions about the presentation. So with that, I'm going to open it up to general Q&A. If anybody has any comments or questions, please type it into the Q&A section. Otherwise, I had one comment that came up, I think it was during Stephen's presentation, about masks and the Tokyo International Gift Show, for example. And I would strongly advise you to have your masks on as a default. And if you go out to any meetings outside of the halls, you know, visiting suppliers or visiting customers, I would have a mask on and then just keep it on to make them feel comfortable. Anybody have a comment about that? Konzo or Mark or anyone? I just feel like the Japanese market has been, for my entire adult life, they're very conscientious about spreading the flu or germs to other people. And so masking was a very common thing since 1990, as far as I know. And I just think that they would feel much more comfortable if you were wearing a mask, and maybe they'll tell you later, oh, we don't need a mask here, you can take it off at our office. But I still feel you're probably making them feel better about it. I don't know. Anybody else have a comment on that? I would also suggest, Mark had talked about testing for some products that might be imported into Japan, and that's true, particularly with cosmetics and food. If you're going to put it on your body, not clothing, but skin creams and what have you, or if you're going to ingest it somehow, it will need some form of testing. And it can be fairly rigorous, but it's not extremely expensive. The testing for creams and lotions and that sort of thing is approximately $700 US per SKU. But you will be asked for information that you likely have not provided to anyone in the past, with details about the formulation and recipe. Some companies, Hawaii companies that I've worked with, have been hesitant to give up that information due to intellectual property protection concerns. But my feeling is that you're not going to be able to sell the product in Japan unless you do that. And nobody in Japan that's testing your product has any interest in stealing your recipe or what have you. But there are plenty of testing companies that are licensed by the Japanese government to do that testing, and we can certainly connect you with who those companies are. There was a question that was typed in. Mahalo for the presentation for Hawaiian Chip. Did you develop the relationship with the restaurant before or after going to sale in Japan? I'm trying to get a feel on the process of making those relationships. Jimmy had to leave. However, I can answer this because I know a little bit about the history of that relationship. That he did have some relationship with the original Hawaii restaurant, Kua'aina. However, most of the relationship was developed in Japan through the trade shows, either at TIGS or FoodX. And so I would strongly suggest you trying to attend one of those trade shows that's more specific to your product and looking to make your connections there. The trade shows are really where it's at. And as Jimmy said, he learned a lot by getting outside of the trade show and going to visit shops and restaurants and things, and just seeing how packaging was done, what pricing was like, that sort of thing. And I highly agree with that. Okay, any further questions? If not, then I would like to thank very much
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Rob. I have one question.
Yes, please.
I was wondering, asking from one panelist to another, I had a question for Mark. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Mark, I had a question. A lot of my clients who do e-commerce have heard back from their customers saying that when they use a distribution center in Japan to sell their product that's from Hawaii, but then the parcel looks like it's a Japanese package. So we want to have that feel that the product came from overseas. Is that something doable using the distribution centers in Japan to make your parcel look like it's from Hawaii?
It would be, but there are going to be some limitations. For example, FBA, if you're using Amazon, they will not deliver anything but in an Amazon box. So that's going to be the case. But within that, there's packaging within packaging. So one option would be for the Hawaiian supplier or manufacturer to provide a box of their product. So you open up the Amazon box and inside is the original packaging. So that's an option. In many cases, it's additional costs, right? Most of our clients will send their raw products to us, to our warehouse. We then put them in generic boxes. The other option would be to supply our 3PL warehouse with original boxes. Again, that's possible. We do it in some cases, like for gift sets. And I should have mentioned that. I'm glad the issue of gifting, Rob brought it up. Probably should have covered the issue of gifting more, because it's a very large part of the whole transaction percentage. But yeah, there are different ways to do it. And look, Brand Hawaii, Rob highlighted it. I think we all highlighted it to one extent or another. Packaging is one certain way to do that.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Kanzo. Good seeing you again.
Okay, great question. There's no other questions typed in. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I appreciate everybody's patience as we went a bit over time, but I think it was really worth it. Great speakers. I'd like to thank Jamie Lum from DBET, Stephen Anderson from the U.S. Commercial Service in Tokyo, Jimmy Chan from the Hawaiian Chip Company, Kanzo Nara from the I Do Web School, Mark Foti and Daniel Zarate from Big Picture International joining us today from Tokyo, Brian Suzuki from Hawaii Air Cargo here in Honolulu, and of course to all of our attendees. Thank you very much. I hope we shed a little bit of light on the Japan market for you today. If there's any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. So thank you and aloha.